Okay, so welcome to this Analytics in a Day webinar. Uh, I'd like to say thank you for everybody who's attending. And normally this would be delivered in a physical environment where we'd be present. But given the limitations of the corona pandemic and lockdown, we're doing this online. And as a result, we've had to adjust the material accordingly. But interestingly, the fact that we have this behavioral change in the way we're presenting it kind of dovetails nicely with the message of analytics in a corporate sense, because analytics needs to address this change in the future. And I think this is one of the things that we're going to discuss in the way that Azure as a whole and Azure Synapse can help deal with this new reality. So to start with, I'd like to take the opportunity to hand over to Janne Sipilä from Microsoft, who has a quick introductory word. Janne, please.
Yeah. So hello everybody, my name is Janne Sipilä and I'm leading data and AI sales here in Microsoft Finland. And good afternoon and welcome to this webinar together with Nordcloud. So I promised to come here and open with a few words what is it all about and what Microsoft is doing around the data and AI area. And as you know, in Microsoft, our key priority is to help our customers to transform their business with data. And in order to do that, you need to have a clear strategy, also a clear data strategy and data governance in place. But in order to achieve the transformation, the foundation needs to be built on the modern data platform. And in order to use the modern data platform, you need to do the advanced analytics, machine learning, and AI, which we are today talking in the Analytics in a Day workshop. And this modernizing your data platform, it's a journey. And it's a journey that you need to take together with your partners and with Microsoft. And Nordcloud is a great partner for you to take you on this journey. They are one of the strongest partners in Finland in Azure. They are the partner of the year of Microsoft on 2019. And they are part of our Azure Expert MSP program, which is led by our corporate in the States. And they are also investing heavily on the data and AI area. And together with Nordcloud, you can start building the foundation for your data asset, modernize your data platform, and start building the analytics on top of that. And the story you will be hearing today is great, and we have been building it together with Nordcloud, with our corporation. But that's everything from my side. I wish you have a great afternoon and enjoy the day with Nordcloud.
Thank you, Janne. Thanks. I suppose, Paul, we can start off by giving a quick introduction of ourselves and a quick intro to Nordcloud itself. So I'll start with myself. On the presentation, I think it says my name is Edward Main, but it's not Edward Main. Unfortunately, we had serious technical issues earlier today with GoToWebinar, and I've been forced to use Ed's profile. So my name is Cormac Walsh, and I'm an advisor in Nordcloud. My responsibility area in advisory is for the aggressive and productive and profitable use of data by corporations. So not letting it sit in a silo and do nothing and just gather dust and go stale. So I help customers understand what they can be doing with the data and how to make the infrastructural and organizational and cultural changes which are necessary to embark on that, because cloud gives such a new framework for the processing and the action upon data insights. It's basically incomparable to what companies have been used to before. My background is in data science for about the past 20 years. I've worked in telecommunications, in banking, in marketing analytics as well, and I've been in Nordcloud for almost 2 years at this point. So And now I'll hand over to Paul.
Hi, so I'm Paul Lyons. I am the head of our data engineering practice at Nordcloud. So I have a team of people who are much better experts than me in all of this and deeply specialized in IoT and streaming data, data engineering, data pipelines, data architectures, and BI and machine learning and analytics. So if we're encouraging you to ask questions all the way through the presentation. If any of those questions get too technical and I can't answer them, then I'm sure I can get back to you after speaking to someone in my team and getting information for you. My background, similarly, banking, touring Europe, working for different organizations, mostly banks, hedge funds, and then later in the sports industry, and now here in Finland with Nordcloud for the last 3 years.
Yes, so as Paul said, we're very open to taking questions at any point during the presentation. But if you look at the agenda there, you'll see that we also have a time allotted for a panel discussion if we want to get into some issues in a bit more depth. Just a bit of housekeeping, you see that we've scheduled two breaks there. So from 2:15 and then from 3:15 to 10-minute breaks. As I mentioned earlier, this presentation is normally delivered physically and it lasts for an entire day. So given the lockdown, social distancing restrictions, we've had to condense the material into the key messages and also the given time. Let's have a bit of an intro to Nordcloud. So as Jan mentioned earlier, Nordcloud was Microsoft's Cloud Partner of the Year last year. We're also physically present in 10 European countries. We have in excess of 450 people, Paul, now. Is it something along those lines?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And about 90% of those people are dedicated to working in customer environments and working on we're pure cloud play, so we don't do anything else. We were founded in 2011 in Helsinki, and as you can see, we have tons of technical accreditations. If we talk a little bit specifically about the data side, what you can see here is our tube map, which indicates different tracks in terms of the way companies can embark on the journey to becoming data-centric, data-focused, data-driven companies. So dealing with all of the cultural and technical issues in order to be able to enjoy the cost savings, but from my perspective, more importantly, the additional revenue opportunities which are introduced when companies migrate towards cloud. One further note about the format of this presentation: we're going to do it in a conversational way between myself and Paul, as opposed to just somebody talking to you and reading slides. So we're wherever possible, we're going to try and bring in points of personal experience and additional points of interest to draw attention to the issues that we're making. Okay, Paul, we go?
Yep, let's go.
Okay, so analytics serving the modern enterprise. So in the presentation, we're going to start off with the idea of how basically every single company is a data business and how critical data warehouses are to the satisfaction and delivery of value to those businesses. And in the following sections, we're going to dive into how warehouses and lakes meet to give easy access to vast amounts of information. And then we're going to move forward into how business intelligence emerges from that, not necessarily a mess, but let's say a choppy sea of data. Yeah. And in section 4, then we'll touch on on the advantages that cloud-based services bring to analytics. And let's say not just advantages in terms of the way they've been used previously from a data asset perspective, but advantages in terms of completely new blue sky opportunities which can be introduced. And then finally, we'll explore a bit about Azure Synapse Analytics, which is the platform which basically provides, from a scalability and processability perspective, a limitless service. And it's the time to deliver insights on top of these services is really, really fast and basically unmatched. So we talk about like how the world of data has changed, and like this is really a kind of a topical point, because like we've known for years that the world and the environment around data has changed and is changing constantly. But I don't think that any of us have seen a change in the way it has changed in the past few months. Companies are basically experiencing the shock of a lifetime in terms of what the corona pandemic has done to them. So if we like take first off the fact that, as I said earlier, that businesses are data businesses. So everything from the corner store with online accounting and stock keeping to like the largest internet retailers, everybody runs on data. But the challenges now are that the way that behavior is streaming into companies is changing, and the way that companies need to be able to act on the insights generated from that data, it just needs to change. So this presentation and these services here are, while it would be easy to say they were always relevant, but I would argue that they're far more relevant than ever before at this point, because it is a make and break for so many companies. And the reality is that if an enterprise does not manage, govern, and secure its data, it basically simply will not survive in the new economy, or even in the new reality which we're not entering into, which we're already in at the moment. And it's one thing to gather and manage data, but it's another to make decisions based on it. And this is where analytics comes in. So without analytics, data doesn't really serve any role other than producing a cost for the storage and maintenance of those data, which is a pretty bad thing. Like dashboards and reports, they support awareness of the current state of the business. BI and visualization strengthen the role of knowledge workers with informed insight, and augmented intelligence can discover information and patterns that even experts may overlook. And for those of you who may be new to the term augmented intelligence, it's a kind of a domain within artificial intelligence, which takes into account the idea that somebody with a particular expertise in a job, they can get very targeted assistance and insights in an AI form. AI is not overruling or taking over their job. It's augmenting their productivity and their expertise. Now, analytics is important, but sorry. Oh, sorry, Paul. I thought you were writing me a note there on the paper. So, analytics is important. You're kind of doing Bob Dylan cards, Analytics, it's important, but it's increasingly evident that not all analytics is equal. It just has not been created equally for like businesses can do more and more complex analytics better and faster and more automated insights when they use platforms such as Azure Synapse. Like data science enables automated insights with a depth and scale that obviously goes beyond human abilities for analysis. Not just in the realm of like dealing with large quantities of information, but in the areas of pattern recognition, where it would just be basically impossible for a normal human to recognize patterns. And like even small businesses today need scalable analytics for social media, digital interaction, and how their market is performing. One quick point about what I just said there is that if a company of any size is able to ingest data from outside sources and produce previously unseen insights from those data to their competition, it looks like magic. Like how are they doing this? Yeah. and like this is this is part of the blurred line between science and art, which data science, when acted on properly, delivers to companies which execute it properly. Then also increasingly machine learning and artificial intelligence drive automated and autonomous processes and decisions for smart organizations. And this is kind of one of the parts of the end point of that tube map where companies want to be. Feel free to jump in, Paul, if you want to. Yeah, but
and in the audience as well, there's like several ways. Did you unmute people? Do people have control over their own microphones, or are we still like microphones?
People have control of their mics now, if they want to unmute themselves and chime in.
Because in a classroom setting, you would just raise your hand and we would have a conversation. And I understand it's a bit trickier here. So there's the questions panel that you can write questions in. There's the chat if you want to do it there, or unmute and just interrupt, and we can have a discussion about something.
Yep, indeed. So okay, so let's continue. So understanding for any company, when they're understanding their data, it's only one piece of the puzzle in the previous situation, but particularly in the new reality. And like being able to articulate the data's insights in an organization is where the real value is found. Like increasingly, decision makers reach beyond traditional reports and dashboards to engage with new sources and tools. So, for example, big data, machine learning, and even AI. In this environment, being able to define and work with data-driven processes is essential. It's essential, but it's also a must-have. It's a make or break. It's like do it or die. And data literacy has become more than just a useful individual skill or a mathematical curiosity, but it's also a shared organizational practice. And the idea of enabling data literacy and promoting it within a company is not just extraordinarily valuable because of the idea of augmented intelligence. So helping experts who might be expert at making car tires, but they're not experts at IT. So like with the tooling that's available within Azure Synapse and Power BI now, it's possible to turn people into specific domain data science experts.
And do you have some like industries or companies that are doing that particularly well at the moment, Cormac, from your experience?
Yeah, there are. I can talk about like an airline that I work with, but I can't mention any names. I can talk about a company that makes car tires. I can't mention any names. Other automotive firms, I can talk about a company such as Microsoft who does it, right? So I can mention them publicly. Microsoft has quite successfully embarked on a massive project, massive in terms of impact, but a project which was run by eight people from a managerial and technical perspective. And what it did was it produced 26 data lakes inside Azure, and it then it created an environment where there were data publishers and data consumers. And then, so let's say you have some data from a particular financial system, okay? So you can wash that data appropriately, then publish it on a data lake, and then I'm somebody who's interested in sales. So then I can access the data set because you've given me appropriate access. I can perform some analytics on it. I get some insights, which can help me in my job, but then I publish those insights as a publisher back into the data lake, and then other people can enjoy the results which I've created. So it's a virtuous cycle. And in the case of Microsoft, there's an interview online where I have a conversation with Microsoft's director of business programs, Susan Melville, about this exact project. And she was telling me that the finance department of Microsoft saved $22 million, right, over a 24-month period by removing manual work, and additionally by creating additional insights on top of that from the data that they've been sitting on, which hadn't been used productively in the past. Now, it hadn't been used productively in the past, not because of some lacking in terms of the people who produce or analyze the data, but simply because there's just too much data to get access to. People don't know where to get it. They don't know where it is. So it's getting back to this kind of cultural idea, but then also the concept of the citizen data scientist. Okay. Now clicking. Yeah, so like when shared data literacy can be combined with self-service tools, individuals and organizations become empowered, and teams become tighter, and organizations become stronger, more profitable, and more secure from a financial perspective. And business users today are tech smart and expect tools and services that work the way they want to work. So business users are really, really use case focused. Tech smart, but they don't care how it works. They just want to know what it's going to do, what it's going to deliver, how quickly and how much. And just like bring your own device, users expect to use self-service analytic tools to build their own dashboards and visualizations, because everybody, let's say, looks through information through the prism of their own experience. Yeah. So a visualization that might be good for me might not be good for you, Paul, and vice versa. So there's different ways that we like to consume things.
I like consuming the data as well, right? No, I'm not crazy about it. But yeah, like some people might want that in a spreadsheet so they can manipulate it themselves, and other people might want a pie chart or some sort of visual representation because they just need the summary. And probably some engineer just wants the alert at the end of the day that something's gone wrong. Just wants some message on his mobile phone to fix something. So that's interesting.
But fundamentally, in each of those cases, the source data and the source systems would all be identical. It's just the presentation layer, which is delivering the opportunity to consume, is different, and that's the only difference. And in an enterprise, which uses self-service analytics properly, IT cannot expect to control and constrain every aspect of the knowledge work. Now they can, provision the data and services while monitoring usage and security, but IT cannot be expected to be responsible for the productive use of the data. So this is kind of getting back again to a shared responsibility model where the business users have to be super clear about what it is that they want to do with the data, and this then is part of the cultural change. So self-service business intelligence puts data governance in the hands of all users. So like, for example, in the Microsoft case that I gave you, and IT's new role is to provide well-managed tools and services to support effective and best practices across the entire organization. And even if they cannot guarantee the results, they can guarantee the availability of the data, but they can't be, IT cannot be responsible for the quality or for the usability of the data. That's why it's handing over the responsibility of the creation of insights to the people who enjoy the data. And services include curated data for business users to consume for BI and analytics. Platforms include data warehouses and data lakes with data science tools and self-service analytics. And we're going to be talking about warehouses and lakes today, and also about the tool suite which Microsoft has, which is Azure Synapse. And then from the consumption of the insights, we'll talk about Power BI. At this point, I'm going to pass over to my esteemed colleague, Paul, and he's going to tell you when to click, because GoToWebinar is suboptimal.
Feel free to click, I think 3 times. And let's load this. Slide comes preloaded with animations.
You want the whole thing? There you go.
Yeah, we might as well. So yeah, I'm more here to support this discussion in the what there is inside the Azure platform and Azure Synapse, and how that relates to the goals that Cormac's been explaining in terms of bringing data to the people. I sound like Che Guevara or someone. So I mean, and then there's a comparison, especially in the Azure data world and in the cloud, between sort of traditional data warehouses, which have been on-prem and self-hosted and self-managed, and in the cloud with this sort of using platform as a service and software as a service services. That seems very awkward to say. And using these to deliver that additional value and to give flexibility to the people using the data warehouses and trying to extract business value from this data. So it all starts with the data models. So there's always been the concept of these enterprise models in data warehousing, star models, hub and spoke models, flattened data sets. So Azure Synapse Analytics is kind of the tool now for where these are created. And we'll come on later to the pipelines that lead to these data models. So the enterprise data models are very much your traditional data warehouse models, strongly defined. It allows you to put permissions and access controls over the top of them. And then the BI models are kind of the next, I should do this from your perspective, the next stage along from the enterprise models, and that's more in front of the business users. So in the example we just talked about with Cormac, where you might have a spreadsheet as a view, you might have some charting as a view, which is probably more the business intelligence sort of view, and you might have a pager view, for example, if you need alerts from your data, somebody spent too much money on the company credit card. So these are separated into BI models. So this is like the next layer down, and it's much more business case specific. And then machine learning models are kind of the other side, where it's looking more at the raw data and trying to find and analyze large amounts of maybe unstructured and very raw data to supply machine learning models and get some intelligence out that way. So that's kind of where it all starts, and we'll try to keep this in mind as we go forward through the discussion. Hang on, you have to press the button. I pressed the button and nothing happened on the screen.
We got a question there.
Oh, sorry.
And the question was about the discussion with Microsoft. If it's okay, I'll post the link at the end of the webinar, because it's just really flaky. GoToWebinar is today, so I would like to not disturb it.
Yeah, we've had trouble with audio dropping out as soon as any other window opens and things like that. So I think once the setup's working, the best thing to do is keep pressing on. I've lost my train of thought now. What are we doing? Yeah, so now let's look at yeah, so we're looking at some of the personas and their needs in the data warehouse environment. So there's this competition, right? We discussed those three business models before, and I mean, you guys can read on the screen as well as me, but because we're trying to enable this citizen data scientists, so these business users who sort of have we have these tech savvy people in the business. If they had a bit more data, they would be able to analyze it for themselves. So, we need to look at why we would give people access like further up the chain to the models. Why not just give them the reports? And this is because that domain knowledge, when coupled with availability of data, is able to sort of bring out additional insights. Next one, please.
Okay.
And then this is, and then to look at it from the other side. So, well, if they're so savvy and they can look directly, you can, form SQL, or you can look at a big Excel table and create a pivot table from it. Then why would you need BI models? And the BI models are a bit snappier, a bit faster. It's kind of the difference between going to a restaurant and cooking for yourself, right? You might be a good cook and enjoy that experience of cooking, but sometimes it's nice to go to a restaurant and not have to do the washing up. So the self-service BI models are a bit more like pre-portioned, pre-served, well-described models that you can connect directly to your analytics suite and get some insight from.
Actually, just on that point, Microsoft was in the discussion. They were calling them experience containers.
Experience containers. That's a very modern way of phrasing things.
It's very, isn't it? Very groovy, yeah. So it would be like a kind of a condensed use case, which people could tweak, for their own particular needs. Yeah. Okay. That's next slide.
Next slide, yes, please.
Yeah.
What do we have? We might have to. Oh, damn it. Okay. This isn't working. I've got two screens that are like 1.5 meters apart, socially distanced.
I think we should tell everybody that we should tell everybody that because of GoToWebinar, I need to do the clicking on the presentation. So that's why Paul is giving me
I'm doing that, but then my speaker notes are on my laptop. So I've got one screen up here and one screen down here. Oh, it's
lockdown.
Feel free to join in the fun. Yeah, so this is kind of my my raison d'etre in the cloud, like cloud native and serverless, infrastructureless. Serverless is a bit of a misnomer, but this cloud native services, like when the cloud first started, it was much more like a data center with sort of an infinite bank of storage next to it. So you would use the cloud to order some servers and sort of use it as an extension to your existing data warehouse, or spin something up to run a campaign where you needed extra capacity and you didn't have that capacity available, or your IT department wasn't cooperating with you, or whatever it was that meant you needed sort of a decent sized set of servers in a small time. So now services are much more cloud native, and around the data space, this is especially true. So managed data storage, which we've already had, but these now have API layers on top of them for sort of Hadoop style access. There's pipelining tools that we'll come to. There's all of these query tools that we will look at as well. And all of these can be kind of strongly managed with infrastructure as code, so that there's kind of repeatability and change management, and quite a lot of these things which traditionally have not been easy to manage in data centers. You've been stuck with like Chef or Puppet or Ansible or something like that. But this is now much more strongly controlled through APIs. And then, combining that strength with your local data center, this Azure makes this possible. Next slide, please. I have to get the correct hand gesture. I need to change it as well. Yes, so again, we come back to this idea of the citizen data scientist and giving everybody access to your data warehouse effectively. That doesn't sound particularly safe or secure. I'm putting data into the cloud, which is, there is no such thing as a cloud. It's just somebody else's computer. So what are the implications of this? I mean, the cloud has exceedingly strong security around the infrastructure and around separation of accounts and businesses that operate within the cloud. Microsoft is exceptionally vigilant in terms of detecting external threats through I heard Mika quote some fantastic number this morning. There's something like 6.3, did he say trillion? I think he said trillion data points per day that Microsoft collect on a security basis between like Office 365, the Azure cloud, and Xbox Live, and presumably their own internal network as well. So all of this experience and reliability goes into making your data warehouse in the cloud much more secure. Next slide, Master.
Paul, there was a question there.
Okay, I'm missing the questions.
So the question was, how many times do you hear that most machine learning models are built on data lakes or other unstructured data? And the questioner says he hasn't heard too many examples of machine learning models on regular enterprise data warehouses. So, for example, like SQL, relational data, etc.
Yes, I think that's kind of true, and I think we'll come to a little bit of this as we talk about sign-ups later on. Yeah. So what's the point being made? That how many times you hear that machine learning models are built on data lakes or other? I have too many examples of machine learning on regular and yeah. I mean I think that's fairly true. Although it's and I think that's more that sometimes the window of that operational reporting is maybe not long enough to give a good training data set for that model, and to give that depth would then be very expensive, because you're and again we'll look at some of how this pricing works, but traditionally I think having large quantities of structured data in hot storage and enough of that data to then train machine learning models has been difficult. And I think now with the cloud opening up and some of these more open source formats like Hive and Parquet, where you can sort of overlay a structure onto unstructured data, it's kind of blurring the lines between what's structured and what's unstructured.
And then just to the point about a large enough time series to be able to train a model. This also connects then to the idea that if we look at it from a retail analytics perspective, consumer behavior is changing. The changes themselves are increasing in frequency and increasing in unpredictability. So I think there is going to be a dramatic rethink of the way models are trained and the requirements for the source data sets there.
Yeah, and maybe some of that expense question as well. Oh, was somebody saying something?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah. So you can say that that's one of the reasons that the reason data science goes back to raw data is the steps of summarization and lack of trust, maybe even in terms of what were the steps that data went through in order to get into the data warehouse. So they would like to look more at the raw data, feeling it's a bit more real. So I don't know if it's data snobbery or if that's a real problem that still exists. It's probably somewhere in between. I would be a snob. I'd like, oh no, I must have the source.
So you're on slide 17 now. Do you want to advance or?
Yeah, let's advance. I think we're somewhat behind time. I think we were supposed to get to that.
We are running slow. We're used to doing this in a day, so we're going to have to pick up the pace a little bit.
Yeah, and now we have 3 hours. It's yeah, and okay. So this maybe comes back to the discussion we were just having in terms of cost. So Azure Data Lake Storage is a very low cost blob storage. You can think of it like S3 maybe from Amazon, or I've forgotten what the other product is in the other cloud. So this is like raw file storage, high volumes, low cost, and with a set of APIs over the top that mean if that data is structured in Parquet, then you can use Azure Synapse to query those files directly, whether they're JSON files or CSV files, and I forget which other formats are supported. And then, yeah, with that ability to then store large amounts of data, to process it effectively, and to run discoveries on that data, that speed of iteration increases. And again, that's about enabling the domain experts in your business to be able to have better access to that data. And then when making sort of large-scale queries over large volumes of data, then Azure is very good at giving you the machine and the compute resources that are able to crunch that numbers. And we'll see a little bit later about how Azure or what Azure gives you in terms of managing different clusters and allocating those clusters to different classes of users within your data estate. Let's go for the next slide. I'm going to speed run the next few. Oof. So I think I just alluded to this a little bit, that we'll be looking later on in more detail at these tools for creating clusters, managing access and usage to those clusters, for running analytics and data models, and the tools that Azure Synapse gives you for creating those. And especially, maybe you've got a team of data scientists and the CEO, and both of these people are basically sharing the same infrastructure if you're on premise, and how with Azure Synapse you can give like VIP users, for example, a more dedicated set of resources. So whenever they need to run a report or get some data for themselves to make a decision, that report's sort of got a guaranteed runtime, and your data scientists are also able to sort of, when the CEO is not after that report, is able to sort of reuse that compute in the pool, and that there's not unused resources sitting around. This is not good speed running attempt. I'm waffling again. Yes, next slide. Are there more questions? I've got to the top of the page on the questions.
Nope. Now we're slide 20.
Slide 20, yeah, I'm catching up. Yeah. So, yeah, this is a concept I've been sort of hinting at the last few slides, where Azure Synapse is about bringing this sort of more traditional, I don't want to say traditional, but the data warehouse concept of high structure, great performance, and immediate insights, and the world of kind of unstructured data and sort of this augmented AI machine learning topics together into a single platform, so that you're reducing the amount of duplication of data, you're reducing the overhead in processing of data. And so these analytics, this is what Synapse Analytics is all about, is bringing these two worlds together in the center. Next slide. Oh, I need to change my slide as well. I'll go down this in a minute. And then, yes, so this is what we see here. So we'll see variations of this picture a few times through this presentation. So Azure Synapse, it's a single central unified experience and workspace for getting your data from where it lives, whether that's out on the internet, whether that's in some application database, whether that's some log files sat on a server somewhere, creating the pipelines, making sure that the data stays secure, it stays encrypted. People who have access to it are the people that are supposed to have access to it, putting some structure over that data and then getting insight from it and generating that value for the business. So this is kind of the snapshot of Azure Synapse. Next, please. Wow. So there's a nice summary of like Power BI and Synapse Analytics. These are what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the presentation. So I think, yeah, so I think it's back to you, Cormac, to talk about some of these central topics. Does anyone have any more questions on those topics before we move on, maybe? Or some comments? There are a couple of any data science examples on a regular database model. I think we. Okay,
I think
let's postpone the panel discussion at the end, shall we? And then we can.
Yeah. But you know, one of the points you made at the end there about Synapse, about the kind of blurring the lines between warehouses, lakes, advanced analytics, and publishing environments and consumption environments. So rolling these together through an environment such as Synapse is a really important point, and I think it connects back to the questions here. But as you said, it would be great if you know, to open this up, as we said earlier, we have this as part of the panel discussion at the end. So let's press forward. So if we think about analytics and AI overall, like as an investment, like everybody knows that it's become a really hot topic for businesses, but there does seem to be a substantial part of organizational inertia or fear on the part of some companies when they're embarking on this, and this fear is not limited to technical concerns, but it can also be connected to leadership issues, misperceived market dynamics, and a fear of what the cultural impacts would be on the company. But I mean, to properly unleash the potential of data with the technologies that we've mentioned already, and we'll continue to talk about later, you know, has proven to be a challenge for some people in leadership. Many businesses report difficulty in deriving deep insights from data, and half of those who reported the difficulty also described disparate data sources and silos preventing a holistic view. But then the irony is that part of the overall solution tears down silos and produces a holistic view. So it's not quite chicken and egg, it's like chicken and chicken. So with that, I'm going to go back to my colleague, my beautiful assistant, Paul.
Yeah, I've worked out why we're behind time, actually. I think because I have to go to the effort of asking you to change the slide, I then feel I need to make it worth your time having done that and talk about the slide for like a minute instead of like, no, forget that one, let's move on. So, so I'm going to try and
well, you just feel free to throw commands at me, and I'll do it. I'm here to serve.
Yeah, you're my like human mouse today.
Yeah, remember, I'm just the facilitator. You're the real presenter.
Yeah, like I say, it's just that guilt, that inner guilt of. Yeah, so I think we've talked about this a little bit in the last section. So that, like, we can move on to the next slide. We don't need to do this again. You guys have read that while I've been talking to Cormac. Oh, no,
yeah, because part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the slide deck, because of the time constraints and the corona social distancing, I've meant that we need to be quite dynamic here.
Yeah. So yes, apologies to everyone trying to keep up with us, trying to keep up with each other.
Apology accepted. So yeah, I think when you look at traditional, what time are we on? Okay, so we're not doing too bad actually. Come on, breathe. Yeah, so security is one of the big challenges that is kind of raised in terms of, you know, if I give people access to raw data, you know, they'll be able to see people's salaries, see sales data for the wrong regions, and that's the reason that businesses have favored data warehouses, because once you put the structure on top, it's very easy to have that fine-grained permissions system, like column level or row level security. Let's go. So this is our challenge. Oh, I need to change my slide as well. Yeah, and so yeah, next one as well. I said both of these points already. Oh, I need to change it. Yeah, and then because businesses have then had to have different products for different parts of their data estate, I think integrating permission systems and identity systems has been a challenge traditionally. So these are like some of the things that having your data estate in a single platform. These are the things that we're trying to address from a security point of view. Ooh. Maybe I don't need to do the sound effect. Maybe just a gesture. What do you think? Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Sound like an email.
You can provide the
yeah, and I think we just touched on this as well 5 minutes ago, these kind of diverse workloads. So machine learning workloads can be very compute intense, but the latency is probably less important. Business intelligence workloads a little bit different. The latency becomes very important with the correct level of summarization and creating these, what were they called? Experience
containers.
Experience containers. So these very sort of specific use case based summaries of data. Then again, the latency kind of exists before that aggregation is created. So then you're able to deliver these sort of low latency insights to people.
Are you referring to the latency there in terms of the compute?
No, in terms of like opening the report and seeing some information. Like I think I've worked in some organizations where the data structure has been how shall we say this politely, somewhat naive, and if you want any report beyond a simple count, then kind of you can be waiting 20 seconds to 10 minutes for that report to kind of generate in the background. So bringing that real-time element, which then, you know, it's a bit like the app on your phone, right? And the bounce rate from apps and websites, that if people feel that something is responsive, they're more likely to engage with it. So having responsive analytics means that people will use those analytics more often, and if people are using them more often, there's a much higher probability that they're actually using the data contained within those reports to make decisions, and those decisions are then driving business, as opposed to, oh, that takes 10 minutes every time I run it. Well, you know, I'm pretty sure that this is it. I've been in this industry a long time. I know what I'm doing. So sorry,
just two comments about what you were talking about there. So waiting 10 minutes, waiting 10 minutes for a report or longer is the reality for lots of organizations. I've bumped into some companies recently that we've kind of dragged out of the Jurassic period, and they would be in a situation where they would have to wait 4 to 6 weeks for a report, at which point they would know in advance that it is completely pointless in requesting it, because the insights or whatever you're getting from it is just totally useless at that point. And this then gets back to the idea that with systems like we're discussing here, business needs to have completely new and fresh expectations on what they can get from their data assets.
Yes,
and this is part of the overall communications process between IT and capability delivery and creation back into the people who turn insights into actual cash. And then on the point that you raised there about experience containers, that one of the advantages here is that they are really compact, right? So the agility in terms of creating them and throwing them away is you're talking like minutes, hours to create something, then decide it's great or it needs further development or it's just awful, right? So this kind of agility and this embracing of mode 2 is really, really, really important. And I think it's a bit like, you know, when it's summertime and the kids are used to having ice cream in the freezer all the time, then they have a period of shock for a few hours, and then they start to embrace it. If that analogy makes any sense, you know.
Well, it's nice to listen to. I'm not going to say anything about the sense. Let's. I think I've got. Do we have a break in 15 minutes? I think by my count on my notes, I've got 15 slides and 15 minutes. So this really is actually, like time to set some work records.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but I've got some slides in between your slides now. So okay, take it away.
Yeah, and then lifecycle management. I have talked about that before, but I bet nobody remembers when I've said infrastructure as code. So keeping models up to date, keeping data structures up to date, having version control over those, having drift control over schemas, these sorts of things. These are challenges in both the kind of the data lake unstructured world and also the data warehouse world. Mm-hmm. So I think Synapse is set up to push these challenges forward. Where are we now?
We're at 31.
31. Oh, so sorry. I think I've been pushing the button here and not giving you the signal. So this is, we talked about lifecycle management here, and then the next one is also lifecycle management. So sorry, that's my mistake. Can you go to 33?
Yeah.
So that we've just talked about.
This is 33.
33. So yeah, that's again like this. You'll keep seeing this point made again and again. So this is sort of this reinforcement learning, shall we call it, in a machine learning world. yeah, bringing these two worlds together with Synapse, and then I think there's a wow slide now. Next. Boom.
I'm just actually, I was just gonna. There's a question here. So
okay, sorry.
Somebody's saying here. So we're suddenly back to silos and data marts again. But the thing is that it's such a huge banana skin and roadblock for companies that it can't be ignored, and it can't be spoken about enough. Companies who purely take this from a technical perspective, in the region of 78% of companies who embark on projects like this, just from technology and scientific perspective, they fail because business just does not know what's going on.
Yeah.
So it cannot be mentioned, you know. And I think
one of the things. Oh, sorry, Cormac.
I would be solidly against the idea of things being done on the basis of a technical curiosity or an interest in challenging oneself in terms of the of how far down the rabbit hole somebody can go in terms of modeling. It just doesn't matter. You know, what matters is how the capabilities are put into use, and that the right data is taken into play at the right time, and the right capabilities are overlaid on top of those data at the right time, and output to the right people at the right time. And so you just cannot get away from this area. If you do, then we'd all just be in a university environment.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you talked about earlier when describing the Microsoft project was that data which or insights which are taken out of the system, or new structures that are created are put back into the system for reuse, right? So that's so while there kind of is like a leaf to every branch, the branch goes back to the tree. I didn't think that analogy through. Maybe.
No, it is.
What I'm trying to say is there's always going to be a report that just one person in a company wants, right? So that effectively is some data mart and some highly specific modeling of that data for that one person. Where that data needs to be reused or some pivot gets created, then these all end up back in the data warehouse for reuse. That was the point. Sorry.
Yes, and that's one of the benefits of a system like this is producing and enabling an environment where you can have this citizen data science, so people who are actively taking part in the profitability of a company, because companies don't exist like for the sake of hiring office space, you know, or consuming electricity or something, you know, like you know, they have a raison d'etre. Do you want the next slide?
Okay. Hit the next slide. The next slide we can just show it. Ooh, Synapse Analytics, and then I think we'll take the next one. I don't think we've exhausted that one.
Okay.
So yeah, so again, the point being, just to reiterate, taking the traditional data warehouse world, the newer data lake world, and bringing those together to create a common tool set, and have one feed the other and the other feed back again in a very transparent way and a very approachable way for developers and for business people and for owners of sources of data. Sorry, go. Is it still me? It's still me.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, let's hit the next one. I think it should be something about price. I haven't caught up on my screen. Yes. So yeah, the thing we haven't really talked about up to now is like the price and the price performance. So the TPCH did a benchmark and found that using Azure Synapse with its headless or disconnected compute, so it's not always on, its storage formats, all of that mean that it's significantly cheaper than the other cloud providers out there. Be that, I think the examples there are Redshift, Redshift, Snowflake, and Google's BigQuery. Although I have questions about the BigQuery number, that can't be right. But for equivalent tests, then that's these are the numbers.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. I think you're next.
Yeah. So let's have a quick look at some cases where our customers have taken advantage of Azure Analytics and enjoyed some pretty hefty benefits. In terms of these customers, given the time, we can't really go into a lot of detail, but we can say that ABI, so the brewer and the alcohol company, they had performance enhancements in terms of the way that the data was being used in their production facilities, and this produced efficiency savings. But then additionally, of course, they had savings on the costs of as opposed to having hosted their own data centers. So there's this gets to the idea that I'm very fond of, about not just saving money, but effectively making money out of nowhere, kind of like a magic trick. And then Newell enjoyed absolutely enormous cost savings. There's a lot of material after this, which we just, like I said, we just do not really have time to go into. And then Walgreens, the retailer, used Insight to manage their inventory while remaining scalable. So this is something which I understand also gets back to coronavirus, because the way that consumer behavior has been changing there, they were able to even push the benefits they had further and find additional revenue opportunities on top. So there are so many cases out there. Now, the customers that we just mentioned, they use cloud analytics, to be able to scale their analytics insights generated and how they're consumed by their staff. But additionally, we have customers who are able to leverage the modern data warehouse track from Azure to be able to ingest and analyze highly varied sources of data, and as well. So, for example, like customers performing fraud detection analysis, not just on financial behavioral information. If we're able to properly talk through these cases, you'd notice that at the core, as we've been talking about already, every single case here is getting the benefits from Azure Synapse. That was just a multi-part slide. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is also a multi-part slide, so you can almost fast forward to slide 45, and I think it's the same slide again, but it just has some animations that go through like all the different pieces.
So just click.
It's probably easier just to talk. Click there.
Like
stop there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's probably easier just to talk through. So what we're looking at here. Sorry, I'm looking at my screen and the camera at the same time. I'm going to go cross-site. Yeah. So this is a kind of the traditional view within Azure of the data warehouse, and if you look at the small labels across the top, data ingestion, big data or data pipelines, we call them, and data warehouse. These are kind of the traditional layers of a data warehouse, even if you're running it in your own data center. So what's our time limit? How much detail should I go into this? Not very much. So yeah, so you've already moved on to the next one. Oh, okay.
Well, did you want? Sorry, you put your hand
No,
up. I thought that was Yeah.
Oh, when did you change it? Oh man, this is too hard.
You put your hand up, and I was like,
oh yeah, okay. Well, you've spoiled the big reveal now, anyway, haven't you? So, yeah. Well, so all of these products still exist in Azure Synapse. So Databricks is still a concept, and it's kind of Spark processing of data, data factories in order to ingest data, and what is it, 80 or 90 connectors that they have to the different upstream systems. So like SAP connectors, Salesforce connectors, Teradata connectors. All of these connectors still exist in data factories, and data factories still exist within Azure Synapse. And SQL data warehouse on the right exists still, and you'll still see a familiar interface with that if you're someone that's used it, and it has added capabilities to it now. So that's around this sort of diverse workloads that we've talked about already. And if we move forward to that second slide, boom. So effectively, what's happened at Microsoft is all of those tools have been brought together into a single studio, which can talk to sources of data, will talk to data lake storage, Azure data lake storage, sorry, and then provide you the ability to run the analytics and machine learning workloads on there. And that's all through a single interface. So it's like your Visual Studio for data and analytics. Let's go for the next one. I think I've got like 1 minute. So yeah, this we've just seen and explained. So I think we can skip to the next one. This we've seen. What's going on? I think we might have had a cut and paste error. It's the same thing with different colors. I think there's been a cut and paste error while we've been surgically enhancing these slides. So next one again, I think.
Now we're going to 40. No,
to 50.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, let's 50 onwards, and we'll look at these very briefly. I probably don't need to say very much about each of these because they're self-explanatory. So it's we're just having a look here at the products which are inside Azure Synapse and proving what I said like 2 minutes ago, like reinforcing that there's still the strong SQL capability, there's still the strong Spark capability that you got with Databricks. Pipelines are still there, which have been part of Data Factory previously, and Synapse Studio is kind of the place where you get the common interface and use all of that together. And we'll take a little bit of a look at that later in the afternoon. Next one, I think this is some more products. Oh yeah,
here we have 50.
Scary picture. Yeah, super scary picture. That's I think that's just there to intimidate people. So this is looking a bit more at the tooling within Azure Synapse. I hope you don't ask me too many questions about the internal architecture because I'm not going to know, but if you do have any questions, I will know somebody that knows, so I'll be able to find that answer out for you. Let's go to the next one. That's me again. Yeah, and then so outside of analytics, that's still that strong tooling suite exists. So data catalog, storage, you can access Databricks directly still. and the strong third-party integrations from the marketplace. These are still here. And next is this. This is and next again. Yeah, go again. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, sorry, that third one was again some surgical error. I think we've left the watch inside the patient.
Okay, we're gonna have a 10-minute break, and let's reconvene at like just before 4:30. Yeah, 2:30.
2:30, 14:30.
2:30. Yeah. Okay, so.
And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can address them when we come back. Or if there's any other comments about the format or the presentation, then we can receive those as a sort of like sprint, mid-sprint review.
Okay, so let's see everybody back in about 10 minutes. Hey, Paul. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I left my headphones in the other room.
I went out for a run in the garden.
I believe you.
Yeah. Well, the dogs were getting bored here, you know.
Been playing catch.
That's it.
No.
Any more questions? Okay. No.
So I didn't see
No.
any. I just checked.
It'd be so much nicer to be doing this in person.
I'm just looking down at my notes of the next section, and it's all screenshots. I'm really it would be so much easier to be doing this in a face-to-face format and doing it as an actual lab.
But we have to live with the
What you do?
the restrictions as they exist, you know. But like an important point is that the message itself is full of content, but it's relatively straightforward. So it's okay.
Yeah, I think so. The next section is mostly the product overview. So maybe we can, if I manage not to waffle too much, we can get through it. Maybe there's questions as well. And then that leaves us more time for a discussion at the end of the afternoon, and a bit more like backwards and forwards. Because yeah, like I say, it's a lot of showing the like what does the tool look like, which is nice, but might be better to use it. But in this abbreviated format, that gets very difficult. Okay. Anyway, we can. I will try to keep it as quick as possible.
Okay, so break time's over. So everybody back from the bike sheds and back into class. Just like the good old days. Yeah.
I should have worn a bow tie, like all my old teachers.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So as you see from the slide here, so tear down the data silos with Azure Synapse Studio. So like this slide acts as an introduction to the following slides from Paul, and what it gets back to something that I've repeated a few times here, which is that let me explain it in a slightly different way in terms of the difference between strategy and tactics. Okay, and even before strategy, you could talk about vision, right? So a company might imagine that they want to be able to, be masterful in their own market, or find parallel or tangential markets which can be leveraged from the assets that they have already. So they might have this kind of vision, okay? Now that vision needs to be translated into a strategy. And the strategy could say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to, I was going to say weaponize. No, what we're going to do is we're going to empower all of our data in order to be able to arm all of our staff to be able to use that data to better their daily jobs and also to find new opportunities. So that could be the vision and the strategy. But from a tactical perspective, it needs to be broken down into consumable pieces of work, practice, and processes. And in a very real sense, as your Synapse and what you're talking about here today, Paul, is where the rubber hits the road on this translation from strategy into tactics. So it's the actual action of the strategy, making it workable, making value generation become possible, making optimization become possible, making cost savings become possible. Okay, and one part of this, the enablement of staff to be able to use these benefits, is this idea of the domain-specific citizen data science. So over to you again.
Okay. And it leaps into
a very visionary.
very, very visionary. And I think the key enabler of that citizen data scientist is sort of free access to data at sort of different levels of aggregation, and alongside some strong permissioning, so that then, but that sort of sensation of freedom and that ability to explore, and I think a lot of that comes down to also then ease of use of the tooling and understandability of the tooling, and kind of familiarity with that tooling to other things that they might have used in the past. So that's my like sledgehammer segue into Synapse Studio.
And it would be one of the ways that Synapse differentiates itself.
Exactly, because it's an integration of, as we saw in the last few slides or before the break, it's taking components that used to be used separately and probably by different teams. Certainly in larger organizations, there's probably different teams responsible for each of those pieces, and bringing that into a single studio where you can still manage people's access to different parts of that tooling, but where all of those tools are brought together in one. So if you are sort of a developer or a super user within a business unit, then you have access to the data, you have an interface to explore that data. And as we'll see, there's tools which help you to create basic queries so that it gives you a head start in getting that exploration started, some basic visualization. And then when you need to crunch some numbers, there's sort of a resource pool attached to the back of that studio that then allows those queries to happen, or for Spark jobs to run, or for imports to process that data into the data lake. So Synapse Studio sort of encompasses all of that, and I think that's key to this sort of citizen data scientist idea. Yeah, so I think it's already said it there. So let's go on to the next one. So I think we'll take a quick look through like some of this interface. It's kind of how the structure of the next bit goes. We look at some of these different sections, and then we look at some of what's behind those sections. So we sort of take a second but slightly deeper look. And then the next break probably can't come soon enough, right? So Yeah, so when you first log in, this overview hub is where you are, and it's got sort of data sets that you were working on recently. There's common places to access, and then there's access to the developed tools. The what does that say? Oh, orchestrate. That's the word I'm looking for. And then also there's links within there to help documentation and to tutorials and these kinds of things. So again, it's about that ease of getting started and trying not to be too intimidating. I remember first starting out as a DBA and not even really understanding what a table was. And yeah, so the purpose of this interface is to try and break that down a little bit and make this much more approachable. Next one, please, Cormac.
Slide 58.
Yes.
Overview now.
Sorry?
It's slide 58 now.
58. Yep, we're there. So this is clicking on the new at the top to kind of get started with something else. So creating data imports, creating new SQL scripts, creating a notebook to sort of more deeply analyze that data, or creating like a new report or even a new input at the other side of the pipelines. Next. Yeah, so Data Hub, yeah, this is where we explore the data a bit more. So this, you will find in here, I'll see what comes up. It's like a whole bunch of slides in here. Which order do I need to? Yeah, maybe to the next one. So you get access to sources of data, whether those are tables in an existing database, tables in the data warehousing area, or files stored on Azure Data Lake. This is where you're kind of exploring those. I don't know if you know about Parquet, but it's kind of drilled down into partitions, usually by sort of date and time. And this interface allows you to drill down to those partitions and sort of explore those data types or those data structures in more detail and get started straight away, creating queries and finding insights in that data. Next. I've kind of lost track of how many. I should have used slide numbers. Yeah, so where you have data on the file system or in Azure Data Lake, then you can attach your different storage accounts into the Data Hub. You can use Data Factories and its connectors to bring data into Azure Data Lake storage. And then again, I think probably we don't focus on this enough during this discussion because we're in the cloud and we have access to sort of cloud levels of storage. Then the storage is available kind of at the petabyte scale where needed. So it's difficult to run out of space in this. Let's move again. Limitless. Well, or like effectively limitless. More than I will need.
I'd like to see somebody find the limit.
I've had that. Well, no, it wasn't for storage. I had where I couldn't provision one instance type because it was too big and there wasn't enough available in that availability zone. I had to go back to the drawing board. Yeah, where are we at? Are we at 62? Are you at 62?
Yeah.
No. preview samples, storage accounts.
Do you want me to advance?
Yeah, advance to 63. Yeah, so 63 is then, yeah, so the other key thing about the Data Hub is this is where you can begin to manage access to your data and to make sure that the right people only have access to the correct data. And you can do this through Active Directory. And here, because we're in Azure Data Lake Storage, then this is being done at the file and folder level, which is, like I said, as I mentioned before, it's kind of at the partition level. So if your sales data is going into one folder and your customer click-through data is going into another folder, then probably you don't want the two teams being able to see into each other's folders at that level, even though you might want the sales team to maybe be creating like new ways of looking at their pipeline data. So yeah, there's different strategies around structuring that data. It might be like one thing that we haven't talked to throughout this, because we're focusing more on the Synapse Studio, is what does the internal structure of that data lake and those pipelines look like, and how many layers should you have within the data estate. So there's many strategies to that. Do you just have a raw data and separate things by files, and then have a prepared layer where things are more structured, and an insights layer? We like at Nordcloud, we kind of abstract it to this sort of very broad definition, but even within the raw data, you might have sort of a write-only area where no humans have access, and that data is sort of archived and stored from there and kept safe, and then it's copied then into different file structures. But then because it's sort of safe and archived, if some like pesky human comes along and hits RMRF, then that there's still like a raw copy of that in the cloud, and you're not having to stress the source system in order to find that data. So there's different strategies that we would discuss in the course of a normal data lake project to find out that best kind of structure for you. And the same principles apply on the other side, where we've talked about these experience containers. I'm going to get this phrase correct in a minute. Experience containers, and for consumers of the data, how far back along that chain? Well, I guess from your perspective, it's how far back along the chain can they get towards the source data, and like then the processedness of the data then becomes the factor in determining how many layers there are. Yeah, I think I went off on a bit of a tangent there. Excuse me.
No,
it's not helping my timing. Yeah, okay, let's move forward. God damn it. I'm expecting it to change on my screen. Can you move forward, Sven?
Yeah. Maybe there was just an animation.
Maybe it was an animation. It was an animation. Yeah, so once you're into a storage account, this is this ease of access to the data. So the tool here makes it very straightforward for someone who's interested in exploring the data and has access to that data to get started easily. Some of these Parquet queries can be, several 100 characters long in terms of like path lengths and file names, and these kinds of things, and it can get a bit typey. So there's simple interfaces, right-click interfaces to get started with those queries, and then to be able to sort of manipulate those within the query interface, and that works both for normal SQL queries and Spark, PySpark queries. Next slide, please. I think probably a bit overpaid just to press the button.
65 now.
65, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, and then this is the same principle, whereas the last few screenshots have been looking at file-based data. This is now the same principles applied to structured and database data. Is that redundancy acceptable? The Department of Redundancy Department. That's what it is.
I think it's like databases.
Databases, exactly. So yeah, and again, this speaks to this fusion that we've been talked about like throughout the afternoon of traditional data warehouse and data lake. So bringing this file storage, SQL interfaces over file storage, and this exploration based interface to more traditional database structures. Next one, I'm not looking at the screen. Develop Hub. Yeah, so this is like the next block down in our interface. And the Develop Hub is really where developers will get started creating pipelines, creating more complex queries. Whereas the previous sort of right-click queries, they're very good for like cutting and pasting the file name and the formats and thing out and into proper queries. They're more aimed at exploring the data and discovering data and sort of then getting started into this developer hub mode. So also this is where you can write Spark jobs, create notebooks, begin to attach machine learning models to the data. I've probably got like three slides ahead of myself, have I?
Possibly there.
And then manage the pipelines for the data. So can you move forward one slide?
Yeah, just before I advance, there was an additional question there.
Okay, well done.
Just that somebody missed some of the slides after the break, and is asking, is the deck available? And yeah, the answer is yes. We can forward the material afterwards.
Good. Yeah, so another, again, exploration tool, which is available within the interface, is some very basic charting capabilities. So when you get a table of results back, it's easy to switch that to a basic chart and change some parameters without having to go through the full Power BI route straight away. And this helps developers confirm, or the other way from my old school days is to sort of paste it into Excel and get Excel to draw the graph. But no, this charting ability is now within the tool. So again, giving a bit more sort of immediate feedback to people who are trying to explore data and learn something about the data, so that then they can sort of create some value from that. I'm trying to, when I think like that, I'm trying to think of different ways of saying the same thing, but it all just comes out the same. I apologize. I'm only human. I only have so many words in my vocabulary. Yeah, so let's go to the next one.
Advance, yeah.
Yeah, advanced. Yeah, so
yeah.
yeah, this is the right one. What slide's this? 69. So yeah, the other tool that's available in the Develop Hub is this creation of pipelines. And there's kind of a visual tool for doing that and a scripting tool for doing that. So showing the visual tool here because it's a bit more visually engaging. So again, this is ways to attach these arrows. Can be formatted. If you've used SQL Server integration services before, or some of these other sort of node-based tools, this kind of a code-free way of building out transformations. So you can add code to them as well. So you can add aggregations, you can merge data, you can join data, you can and these are all controlled through nodes and this kind of drag and drop interface. I think there's some examples on the screen there if there's enough. What does that say? Exists lookup. Yeah, so there's a ton of different tools in each of these blocks which you can use to as a non-coder to create different views from the data and then sort of explore the output of that. Next slide. And of course, I haven't pressed the button. Of course, then there's Power BI, which is that analytics, that dashboard, visually representing the data in a way that kind of brings that data to life and allows people to interact with it. Maybe creating different sort of zoom levels of viewing that data, comparisons of data, and the sorts of things that these BI tools are good for. Next one.
And then I'll advance one more.
Advance one more, yes. Oh, okay, I'm back. I'd gone off. I thought we'd got off my reference sheet. I was a bit lost. Yeah, we saw a little bit of this before from this. Was it TPCH report? Comparing these different data warehousing tools, and that Azure is considerably less expensive on a performance base than the competitors. And I think the next slide shows that in chart format.
Yeah, and I think kind of combining that cost saving with the fact that it's an easier migration path from SQL means that overall you're talking about a great starting point.
Yes, I think that's often overlooked as well, right? That you have developer skills already, and sometimes tooling helps a lot. Like I said before, you could have been doing your Spark in one tool and your SQL in another tool and your pipeline orchestration in a third tool, and having all of these integrated together is another cost saving, or it's more like a value realization, right? Because I imagine that a team of a particular size comes out as a relatively uniform cost, so the cost doesn't go away, but the productivity of that team increases, and then their responsiveness to the business and those backlogs that we probably haven't talked about, is like prioritizing the need for different data manipulations and different report writing, like this like lower overhead in tooling and lower overhead in getting going, it increases the productivity of those people and increases the sort of satisfaction. I don't know, are these things that people generally care about? But I think you know, as a modern organization, many modern organizations are now looking at this, like this empowerment is also part of a satisfaction journey, as well as a sort of a cost saving journey. I might have got too philosophical. That's what happens
No,
when
you
I'm
haven't,
doing this.
but it's part of the overall journey, you know, to kind of kick off with easy to realize savings, and then you get into additional efficiencies and economies of scale, and then you move into additional value and revenue generation because of new practices and new opportunities. So
that's right, and having
journey,
an interested workforce, then that people who want to discover things is an important motivator in this journey as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of like letting people express, in a sense, their inner child, because the way, if you think about the way, you know, kids kind of play with and explore the world, well, those skills we haven't necessarily lost as adults, right? But it can be difficult to express and use those kind of legacy tooling concepts. And with something like the Synapse system you're describing here, it's a way to kind of reignite that spark that was once there, you know?
I think so, and I think explorability is, like, to get really off topic. Explorability is an often overlooked feature or need. Maybe need is the word. We had like the CEO of Snapchat come and talk to us when I was in Germany, and he was talking about the way they designed the interface was to be like, it wasn't hand holding, there were no menus, it was entirely exploration led, so that then the kids who discovered how to do something would naturally want to show off and explain that to their friends. And that was part of the addictiveness and this like rapid growth of Snapchat as an app. And it made it infuriating to parents as well, because parents had somewhat like lost that ability to explore. So it made it feel more that it was the kid's own app because their parent couldn't use it. So I think having that explorability and that sense of fun and sense of showing off that you've managed to achieve something, that sort of Kathy Sierra kick-ass, the ability to kick ass, is I think that's a big part of bringing all these tools together and opening them up.
But this also kind of resonates with the idea of people publishing insights back into the data lake.
Yes.
You know, so people can say, here, you know, look what I actually discovered. Discovered it from what was previously considered to be a mundane set of data, but it's improved something. And then they can even advertise within the platform and say, let's say they've done some financial analysis in terms of sales, but they could have discovered some insights which are highly relevant for sourcing or for supply chain, and then push this insight to be consumed in a previously non-imagined way. So this is maybe the kind of thing that you're talking about here. So this,
exactly.
I'm not boasting, but I'm saying here, like this, look, this is truly awesome what I've just discovered. You know, go run with it and play with it.
Yeah, that reminds me of another like Adidas story. There was the guy, one of the business owners for the socks business. Can you imagine? There's like a business owner for that. He was very depressed because he had to give like a board level presentation. So he sat down and he did some number crunching, and he actually discovered that despite just being socks, the sock business was like per unit profit was the most profitable business that Adidas was running at the time. So there's like these little hidden gems of insights that if you just go looking for them, you can uncover them. I don't know if that's an Adidas trade secret or not. Sure, it's fine.
Cool. Very good. Okay.
Yeah, we're off the topic of 94% cheaper than BigQuery. But,
well, strictly speaking, we're not totally off the topic because it's 94% is talking about money, and we were talking about money. So.
We were talking about money, yeah.
Indeed.
So
now,
yeah,
as advanced 74.
Yeah, and then this is looking at the not just the price, but the price performance, which I don't know how to express in real words, but effectively like your per minute of compute, how much processing do you get? So assuming a minute of processor time is the same on all three clouds, how much processing does that minute buy you? I think that's how to describe that. Oh, look at those horrible things. No, it's the other way around. For a given unit of work, how much do you have to spend to get it done? Yes, that's what that is. But I guess one is the inverse of the other. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I clearly don't know what I'm talking about.
You got.
Yeah, so I think when we talked about the developer hub in the Synapse Studio, we talked a little bit. Sorry,
I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, when we talked about the developer hub in Synapse Studio, we touched on that's where to bring in predictive models and machine learning models, and these are some of the tools that you can use for that and incorporate those models directly into SQL statements with this like predict keyword in TSQL. Next one, please. Oh, I haven't moved. Yeah, and the ability to use SQL on top of streaming data and on top of IoT data, and have that sort of analyzed as it's coming through the pipelines. So to be summarizing and sort of siphoning off some of those summaries as the streaming data is coming through. Next, please. Next, please. This double screen thing is killing me. It's really, really killing me.
Yeah, it's not very efficient.
So sorry everyone for that. Yeah, so I think we talked a little bit earlier. I introduced the concept of these diverse workloads that Synapse is able to cope with. So when you have a cluster of compute, you're actually, maybe the next slide does this better. Yeah, so you can allocate a certain size or a certain portion of a cluster to a particular set of users. So if you've got some reports that are running all the time, you probably want to give those a particular level of sort of background capacity. and then maybe your data science team is using some other capacity in that cluster, then when your data science team, they all go off and have a pizza together at lunchtime, then that capacity is back in the pool and being used by that reporting function. And again, I don't know if it comes later, but just in case it doesn't, this then gives you again, if there's an executive level, I think this is isolation. Is priority next? I don't know if priority is next. You can prioritize these allocations as well. So that you could say, you know, like this, the C-level group always get a minimum of 10% capacity in the cluster, and that way, when they need to run their reports 5 minutes or their 5 minutes before the board meeting, then that capacity is there, and it's guaranteed for them. And once that's finished, it goes back into the pool, and everybody else still has access to it. So you haven't got resources which are allocated and sitting idle. All the resources are being used up to the maximum capacity available at all times. So that's kind of another way of thinking about cost saving is through utilization. I guess the next slide is probably going to say exactly what I just said. Oh, okay, more animations.
Yeah, animation. I love that animation.
And a new feature of Synapse is having more than one of these clusters. So now you can have a data science cluster, a BI cluster, or something cluster, or you can allocate those clusters by business unit. I did the vertical and horizontal the wrong way around there, I think. So yeah, which would then make cost allocation more straightforward, although there's other strategies for doing that. But that means then that maybe you have a GPU cluster available for training machine learning models, but that's only available to the data science team, and it's not available to the general reporting pool. So there's different ways of thinking about these clusters, and probably in a large enough organization, you would end up creating combinations of these. Maybe the next one. Yeah, so here we're summarizing again that. So I think probably there's enough text on there that when you get the presentation, you can review that. But that's on before. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Yeah, and again, I think I reminded myself of it a little while back, is that while we're in the cloud, it's petabyte scale. Another advantage when running the data warehouse and the data estate in the cloud is that once your data is in the cloud, you're using like intra-cloud backbones, right? So you're using very effective, very efficient network. Moving data is effectively seamless within certain limits of scale. And because it's inter-cloud, if data is staying within the same region, then generally there's also no cost associated with that as well. So you can have huge amounts of data, you can manipulate it very quickly, and you've got that for a very reasonable cost. Next slide. Oh, what's this doing now?
I think it's another animation.
Oh, this is about materialized views. So this is Going completely mad. Yeah, so materialized views are very useful because they can give transactional consistency to the data, and it also gives hints to query optimizers and caches and these sorts of things, which is another way of ensuring this low latency in these analytic scenarios. Analytic scenarios. I'm going to take another drink of water. Yep. So yeah, because of the caching and the query optimization, these even at petabyte scale, the queries happen very quickly. So maybe the next slide. I think I just talked about that. Sorry, next slide again. It's very difficult. What's going on? I'm not catching up.
I've just 83.
83, yeah, I'm catching up. All I've done is just talked ahead because I haven't got control of the click, 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 or I would just naturally like press the button as I'm talking. So next one again.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go, security. So I think we talked about this, like, what was it, 6.4 trillion, 63 trillion? It's only a factor of 10.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It was 6 something trillion, 6 point. I think it was a lot of data. So there's many levels, many layers to this onion. You might say of security, from you securing access for your users to particular resources, out to Microsoft securing physical access from their database, from their data center. God, it's happening to my brain. Yeah, so preventing people, unauthorized people from entering their data center, and everything in between, sort of cyber threats, denial of service, user identity and management and authentication. So all of these sort of are provided as a service within the Azure cloud. So there's a lot of levels to the way that Microsoft takes security very seriously. And in fact, we visited Redmond at the beginning of the year, and the first talk of that day was somebody who I would hope to emulate one day in his ability to engage his audience. Maybe when we're back in the classroom, right? But yeah, that was some security researcher nerd who took these things very seriously, and he described many different like attack vectors that they need to deal with and do deal with on a daily basis. Next slide. You would think that story would have a punchline.
They're
additional costs.
They're making massive investments in security, aren't they?
Yes. Well, I mean that was really the focus of that talk that was being given, was the way that the specifics elude me right now, but so do normal English words. But yeah, the way that Microsoft is not just sort of we take security seriously, but actually going into the way that it's taking security seriously, and part of that collecting of these trillions of data points per day is about training machine learning models underneath that can recognize these threats that humans wouldn't be able to recognize, and sort of correlating accesses not just in space, but also sort of having that deep time look at threats and the way that attacks are structured. So yeah, it's not just about using security products, but Microsoft are also doing, very active security research into making that platform much.
Yeah, I understood that last year it was in the region of like $1 billion invested and 6,500 people dedicated, 6,500 engineers dedicated in the security and prevention practices. So quite considerable.
Scary numbers.
Yeah. But good numbers, quite reassuring.
Yes, very reassuring. And again, that's that one little line that got added to the bottom of the slide there. That's kind of included in your entry price of the Azure platform, having that kind of backup of security infrastructure. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So here's a list of the things which are secured, which I think we probably covered most of those. Are there any there that we need to? Yeah, I suppose at the bottom, like one thing which I haven't mentioned is the Azure Security Center, which is to get sort of a report of your own infrastructure and the way that it's configured and recommendations. And I think a lot of that modeling that they do is related to that, and learning from all of their customers on their estate and being able to sort of give that information back to you at scale, which is kind of eating their own dog food, which is the Microsoft way. In terms of crunching the numbers and giving some value back to customers. Let's go for the next one. So are you at serverless?
Yep, 86.
Yeah, let's go for the next one then, 87.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, this is so serverless is a topic near to my heart. Serverless ambassador is another of my job titles at Nordcloud here, and that's so there's always servers. That's like the question I used to get a lot when this was fairly new, was like, where did all the servers go? Well, the servers are there. That what it really means is that as an engineer on the infrastructure side, it's not the server that you're concerned about. The server is now managed by Microsoft. Is it up? Is it working? Is it patched? Does it have the right version on it? Does it have the right version of the services on it? All of this is somebody else's problem, and you're able to write code, send it to the cloud, and let the cloud take care of where it executes. You're not pointing that code. You're not connecting to a particular SQL server and running your query on that server. You're creating your query, sending that to the cloud, saying where your storage is that you want that query to run over, but it chooses some server, a CPU and some memory to run that piece of code on, or in the case of some of these scenarios, several CPUs to distribute the code over and have that run against your data lake and bring you back some results. So you're no longer worrying from an engineering standpoint of, is that server alive? Do we need to buy some more memory for this? Do we need some more disk space? This is handled entirely in the Azure platform. And so, yeah, this then gives us, again, this lends to this discoverability and the barrier to entry for people to get started querying is it's not a call to IT first to get a server and get some data loaded on it. It's more fire up Synapse Studio, explore the data hub to find out where the data is that you have access to, and then create a query and send that into the cloud and have that query return results for you. And there's minimal necessity to go through some bureaucracy in order to have that discovery. Next slide then. I thought you had some comment to that, Cormac. I was waiting for it to come through.
No. Well, okay. I was going to say that it's just like the kind of really where the magic happens is just from a pool of resources, which is dynamically selected by Azure. So,
yes.
So that's why they could be anywhere, and it just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, exactly.
It's total abstraction.
So here we have a picture of that in action, which you've probably absorbed by now. There's the one phrase in there that I probably forgot to mention in that serverless discussion. Then, because I think another important part of that is that the billing then is on the execution and the duration of that execution. There's not a base load because you haven't got a cluster that's spun up and at 100% the whole time. You're paying directly for that query being executed on that CPU at that time and for the length of time that it takes. So for this discovery-based interfaces, I worked with one customer who they did all their data science basically in the first 3 months of the year. I think this was a quirk of the way that their data warehouse was loaded and the way that they integrated sort of data from their different spin-offs and products. But essentially, they only did their research projects for the next year in the first 3 months of the year. So in that scenario, having this more serverless availability and this kind of low hassle approach, you can still get a query run, but you're not having to deal with the infrastructure around it. Becomes a very compelling case. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, so Apache Spark. Where is this on here? Oh, we're doing all right for time. Oh no, we're not doing all right for time. 7 minutes over.
Well,
There's only a few slides left. Yeah, so there's a Spark interface. I'm like conscious of the time now. So yeah, inside the Synapse Studio, there's a notebook style interface. I can't remember what the name of the notebook is. It's not Jupyter. Oh, I've forgotten how that word ends. So yeah, there's the things you would expect for a rich interface, development interface, IntelliSense, or what do they call that now? Code completion, and highlighting, and the ability to, I'm assuming people have seen some of these notebooks before, but the ability to run individual blocks within that notebook and rerun blocks. Let's go for the next one. Uh-oh, what have I pressed?
I'm 91 now.
Yeah. I know I pressed some other app by accident on my thing now. Things are loading on my desktop. If I disappear from this GoToWebinar, that's what's happened. Yeah, so configuring notebooks as well is is available there. So monitoring job progress. So if there's a notebook that takes, several steps, and each step takes a few minutes to run, then you're able to track that summary of where that notebook is in terms of going to completion. Next one. Short couple of words about pipelines, and then I think we're done for the break. 85 number, I think that's incorrect. Yeah, we talked about these before with these connectors to source systems, these connectors to outside systems. So importing data from other clouds, maybe from Redshift or from RDS, from your on-premise SQL server, or maybe Teradata, Exadata, from cloud services like Salesforce. So all of these connectors that used to be Data Factory connectors are still available in Azure Synapse. And the next slide. And goodness me, a lot of text. So yeah, so yeah, data flow capabilities. Able to monitor job status and yeah, where the pipeline is in its execution is essentially the highlight of these big blocks of text. And I think maybe we take, I think that's that should be the last one, and then we're ready for some questions on that section, if any have come up in the meantime.
Nope.
But that was not a very short walkthrough of Synapse Studio. And again, the things trying to highlight there really are its flexibility, its low cost in terms of price performance, and the ability to have multiple groups of people at your company using that same studio in diverse ways, looking over diverse sets of data.
Exactly. So let's have a quick break now. Let's come back at, shall we say, 3:35?
Yeah, I think we can. What time are we supposed to finish here? 4.
4. Or do we want to?
Yeah, then let's do that. So the BI. Yeah, I'll can we create a poll?
What?
Can we create a poll in the or maybe we have 5 minutes. Come back. Everyone can sort of refocus their eyes after sort of product screenshots for 40 minutes, and then we quickly look at Power BI. It's a very short section, and then we can go on to our and I think most people are aware of Power BI. There's nothing particularly new or groundbreaking to reveal in there, just to show how it integrates to Synapse Studio. So let's do that. Give us the time.
So let's come back at 3:35.
Agreed. Oh, does this moiré happen?
Can you hear me now?
Sorry about it. Yeah, I can hear you now. I just noticed
Okay.
this. Did you get this moiré button here? It's pretty horrible.
Say again?
It's like
What?
interference pattern on the shirt.
Oh, groovy.
Like some TV weatherman from the 70s.
Excellent.
Shall we move on? I'm ready when you are, where I thought I was.
Yeah.
I'm no
Okay,
less
so
ready than usual.
couple of slides about Power BI and Azure. Can you see that? Because the slide is doing some funny stuff for me.
Yeah, it's expanded it all the way out. Yeah, the animation's finished. Oh, there you go. Might as well start there.
Okay. So let's just go through it. So again, an organization needs to consider where it is on a curve like this. And if we look at the potential increase in value on the X and Y axis, we see that the value and difficulty have a very direct relationship. So like BI is the beginning of how we work towards maximizing the value of the data. It's really key. And then as we work towards the understanding of more complex business questions, such as why did things happen, or how can we make certain things happen, how can we intervene, how can we find ways to even prevent things from happening. This is kind of a critical intersection between business intelligence and analytics. And of course, I could again talk about the fact that this in itself is not just a technical issue; it is a strong communication, managerial, and leadership issue as well, to be able to get this across to a company which has been used to operating in a different way, where they effectively just take what they're given, as opposed to setting standards and ever evolving standards about what they expect from the technical and scientific capabilities of an IT department. So this is back to you, Paul.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's where, like this sign-ups that we've been talking about again, and this citizen-led science that it then doesn't, it's not always a centrally led project that might be the first instance of some machine learning or some prescriptive analytics in a particular workplace. I think that's an important thing to consider, that it could be a particularly motivated or well-researched individual in a particular business unit now having access to the tools and to a rich source of source data. Yeah, I said source twice. A rich source of data might be where some of these insights begin to start, and that again, it's that concept of bringing together these different tools into one studio, giving them strong controls and letting people have at it. And then Power BI is then sort of the cherry on top of that cake, which gives very easy access to visualizing that data in a number of ways. And again, huge amounts of that data and a low latency.
Ideally.
Ideally, yeah. I mean, it's very easy to write bad queries.
Okay, 102.
102. And as well as having that analytics capability, I think we just said this in the last 1 minute, is being able to attach these machine learning models within that Synapse Studio, so that you've got sort of the new and the traditional coexisting in that same platform, and that somebody who's skilling themselves up in the traditional may accidentally discover the new, or any combination thereof. So let's go for the next one. Like I say, this is fairly...
like what you just described there is a part of the desired state.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the Synapse like enables machine learning and business intelligence to exist side by side, and then much of the rest of it is mindset, right? How do you do this on a project basis? Do you spin up particular teams to do these things? Do you put that towards the business unit owners or the business owners who have that context and know the questions that need to be asked, and how you go about enabling that more from a personnel structure as well. But as you go through that journey, the important thing is that Synapse and the Azure platform is there, able, like, on that growth journey with you. So at that chart that you just described, if you're down there in the analytics, like looking at the current state of your business, and as some businesses are that are multinational, operating several systems that don't talk to each other, and trying to integrate that into monthly accounting at the end of each month. As you start down that journey and up, well, let's do it from your perspective, up that curve towards the I forgot what they are, diagnostic, something, predictive, and then prescriptive. As you work your way up that curve, then the tools are there, and it's the same environment, and you access the data the same way, and you're effectively sort of growing your skills within a single tool as an individual going through that journey, and as an organization going through that journey.
For sure.
Did that answer the question? It sounds like I just waffled again.
No, it's good, solid. So we're on 103.
103, yes. It's sort of a more detailed look than the previous slide. So where does the data? So looking at it more from a layered view than a product view. Yeah, and I think I've probably touched on all of these different people in like the past 2 minutes of. And I think the important thing here, relating to the last few sentences said, is the double-headedness on those arrows, right? So your business analysts are sort of able to sort of drift across these silos. And I think we talked in the previous section before the break, or introduced it, that breaking down the silos, and this tool set is enabling that your business analysts can transform into data scientists, your IT professionals can transform into business analysts, and the tools are there for people to go through this sort of discovery journey within the data and build new business. Next, please. Yeah, this is more of the same. How these two things sort of communicate under the hood. So I think maybe we'll go to the next one. Otherwise, we're not going to have any time for discussion.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is this animating itself? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's a Forrester report which analyzed that there's a nearly, over 250% return on investment for adoption of Power BI for your analytics and using Azure Synapse and its sort of dynamic cost model and allocation of compute resources to sort of increase metrics across the board. Let's go for the next one. I think there's just some examples of Azure Synapse and its integration into the Synapse Studio. So again, you're not having to go off to an external tool in order to create these reports. This is being managed directly from within here. You have access to your prepared data sets. You have access to data catalogs. You have access to the different visualization types, and this is all available in the same tool. So I think click through and click through.
Maybe you mentioned it earlier, but one of the really groovy things is when you do actually import data into Synapse in the first place, you can then start using the automatic speculative analysis and models which exist within it, and then automatically pushes the output to Power BI, and that's groovy. Well, once you've got Power BI up, obviously.
Yeah, I think the next two slides are just examples of sort of editing and then publishing those reports directly from Synapse Studio. So updating an existing report, adding a new field, adding maybe a new chart to a dashboard, all of this can be done within Synapse Studio directly, and published from there back out to the user group. So we go to the next one, and then I think that's.
But we should say that it can be done within Synapse Studio, but it's really easy to do. That's the thing. Like
yes. Sorry. Easy. Well, I guess that's sorry.
Yeah.
I'm skipping over.
We've used it ourselves, and it takes a huge amount of work away from Yeah.
Yes. And that's a published report being viewed, or a published dashboard. I think this is from Microsoft's Yellow Cab dataset.
That's the lab data, isn't it?
Yeah. So they're a fake taxi company. Yeah, and that's so when you get the slide deck, there's links to resources and further sources of information, and other ways to get in touch. So take advantage of those, learn for yourself, and good luck with that journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good, Paul. Thank you. Yeah. It was a pleasure. So now we're going to have an open discussion.
Yeah.
So
if anyone's brave enough.
To all attendees, you have control over your own mic now. So if you want to ask a question, please feel free, and we can have a discussion now. I think.
Is there anything on the chat?
No questions. we comments. Thanks. Gotta go. Bye bye.
Okay, I see that.
Okay. So one comment from one attendee. So Nitsaron, thanks for the great presentation. I understand how you're paying. I understand your pain and how hard it be to pack one day into 3 hours. And hopefully we get a demo with Studio later on. Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, when we can do this in person, then we can go through the labs and properly experience.
And surprisingly, it's much more fun actually doing these things yourself rather than being shown a slide presentation of the screenshots. Be a shock to learn.
Yeah. So do you have any further comments or insights, Paul, you'd like to share?
I mean, I think, well, like how long have we got? So I think like what we've talked about today a lot is kind of the philosophy of this citizen data scientist, and then the tooling that makes that happen, but we haven't necessarily talked about and how those citizen data scientists would use the tool, but maybe not a lot about the structure of each individual, like how to build a data lake. We've definitely ignored that as a topic during today, and how to like a bit more, like we've talked about the two extreme edges, right? We've talked about this high level vision of like citizen data science and everybody together sort of getting involved, and we've then talked about here's some tooling that enables everybody to get involved, but there's not been so much about how that tool is used like on a day-to-day basis. What are the processes? What does the typical day of a data analyst look like now that you're using Synapse Studio? So I think it might be interesting to explore that in a different round. I don't know. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, we could have a quick chat about it now, because the thing is that it's very easy to say data lake.
Yes.
And establishing it is not difficult. But the thing is that what is it intended to do? What systems does it need to ingest data from? Is there going to, how much of that data ingestion is just a kind of a brutal migration, let's say, just a transfer, and then how much of it needs to be dealing with ongoing ingestion of data? What kind of systems do those data within the lake, what do they need to be connected to? And within the lake, what degree of structure is going to be present? And then what use cases are served? So the thing is that all these questions and more, they're dealt with when we were earlier on hinting at the idea of vision and then strategy.
Precisely. That's
yeah. So companies embarking on this kind of journey, they have to get the strategy straight. They need to know what it is that they're trying to get from a big picture. Once they have the strategy, then the strategy needs to be deconstructed down into a bunch of tactical actions which serve the requirements of the strategy. And this is once you have this idea, then you can actually start constructing the data lake, which is specific for the needs of the enterprise. So the thing is that in the question and conversation that you just mentioned there, you've kind of opened up what it is really to do the whole thing.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think like today we've talked a lot about the why this is important and what there is, but the how and maybe the when even. What are the 5 whys? What, why, when, where? Where is Azure, right? And how? So we've addressed three of the 5 big questions.
But then also, once you have a solid and actionable understanding of what the strategy is, it's imperative to have a solid governance model in place, because it's also very easy to turn around and say that we're going to empower people to be able to publish data and to publish results of analysis and insights on data. But it immediately raises the question about security concerns. But of course, it's absolutely there is no this is the most important thing, but security is up there. Okay. Yeah. Governance overall is going to define how costs are controlled in terms of what kind of things people can, for example, can spin up or do, what kind of resources they can use, how they should be using those resources on a daily basis, how tidy they should be. Governance connects to the feature set which is available within a cloud environment delivered to an organization, and what the backlog of future features are in order to satisfy backlog of use cases, which have been defined in active conversation with business. So all these things they all connect together. There is no one single thing which we want to pay attention to. Everything has to come online as smoothly as possible at the right time. All of these capabilities and considerations.
Yeah, and I think that's where cloud-based data lakes and data warehousing make a lot of sense, because much of that hassle and that ability to get started, that if I think back 20 years ago, the amount of trouble it took to get started on a project or of any sort of magnitude, you would need a database server, you would need some middleware server, and these would all be physical servers. You'd need to find some space in the computer room at the end of the building to put all of these things. You'd need to get them like networked up together. You would have to buy some new internet line to get them out to where they were. Then somebody would be awful about the firewall, and then none of your services will be able to talk to each other. So all of these things were all overhead, and all sort of led to sort of weeks lead times for projects just to get started. So the amount of effort you had to go through to justify starting in order to go to that hassle and expense of doing all of this up front was a nightmare. So and some of those things that you mentioned there, security and management and these things, that you still have to do them and you still have to take care of them. And there are tools that enable you to do it. Active Directory exists. These ACLs and row-based and column-based security in the database exists, and it's tightly integrated with your Azure Active Directory identity and the roles and the groups that you're assuming in there. And to get started, you take a file and drag it and drop it into an Azure data lake storage and right-click on something and write a query against it. Like that's the 6 weeks of lead time that it used to take is now sort of 20 minutes of a little bit of Googling and a little bit of like exploration. So I think that it kind of turns the whole model of some of these ways of putting these things together on its head, and I think that's why I'm very attracted to this idea of the citizen data scientist. I really do like that term. Because it's so easy to get started for, and to get people who are interested started. And I think that's what the cloud brings us, and Azure in particular.
I mean, like you were saying there, that 20 years ago was more difficult. Of course, I wouldn't remember, because 20 years ago I was only 9 years old.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I mean, yeah,
had a very hard life. I'd give up the whiskey and the smoking.
Exactly. I'm far younger than I look. I wish, but okay. I mean, this was a fascinating discussion. I'd like to say thank you for the attention of the participants, and thanks for the questions.
Yes.
I'd also like to say thanks to Paul for giving a fantastic overview of Synapse there. And I think it would be nice to do this again. Maybe we could take even a slightly different track and get a bit more into the actual use cases.
Yes. I think with a bit more time, or with then that's definitely doable to actually then look at the structure inside the data lake, as well as the tools that enable it to be successful. Yeah, I think the structure and the design is just as important to be successful as the tools.
Precisely. So, having said that, we're a minute over time. So, thank you, and everybody stay safe, and to the people in Finland, have a fantastic midsummer, which is in a couple of days. Yeah.
You
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.